everyone, Zillerant here, and today we're going to take a look at the Corrosion team. I think it's probably going to be one of the people's favorite teams based on the knowledge that we know that Clukay is going to be in the Corrosion team. But currently what we have available is we have our SSR unit from the standard banner, Peritya. We have Nagant from the SR units, and then the free one we got at the beginning, a Nemesis, that's been kind of a main part of the story. But then we have two other units that will be coming in the future. Everybody knows Clukay, and then we have the support unit Mechty that will be coming up here in the future. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. Alright, when we take a look at the banners here, just know that this is all subject to be different on the global side, so anybody can come pretty much at any point. Now there is one thing with the Clukay, who is the main heavy DPS for the Corrosion side. She is unlikely to be coming soon, and that is primarily because she is tied to story chapters. From what I read in Discord as well as some comments, is that it's going to be tied to chapters 9 and 10. So for those who are definitely going to be hardcore saving for her, especially wanting to get her dupes, you may actually have a good chance of getting that time to save up simply because she is tied to some chapters in the story. Now, we don't know how much they might want to try and accelerate the story if they're trying to maybe potentially catch us up story-wise to CN. We'll have to kind of see how they approach that. But then how they replaced it, did it in CN was that immediately after Mechty came out, so they kind of did a double whammy on having her come out, and then immediately one of the best supports for her coming out as a member of the Corrosion team. And so it definitely was incentivized to spend money to get more pulls at that point, because most people probably dumped everything they could into Clukay on the CN side. But let's go ahead and take a look at the units themselves. And when we take a look at the Corrosion side of things, the first one we'll take a look at will be Mechty here. Basically a top tier support, just does all around a lot more than the other one currently on the team, which is Nagant, who's also support that does a lot of defense. Defense down, can put some vulnerability on the enemies, but they don't really have much damage themselves, and they don't really have much other utilities when they're kit, so truly an SR unit there. But I mean, they would be the other person you bring alongside Mechty, because you're going to want to have your two supports, because right now one of the big negatives of Corrosion is they don't have a healer or tank unit yet in the game. It's just DPS and support types. So if you're going to go a full Corrosion, you're probably going to mix in a tank like Suomi to be your tank, and then the rest will be probably the two supports alongside Clukay. So the first one here with the SSR is Mechty. Basically has everything, has that defense down, has a bunch of other little debuffs here that you can see. And Mechty, in my opinion, is going to be just an all-around good support that you can apply to pretty much any team, not very specifically needed to go with the Corrosion team, but is the best when working with the Corrosion team. When we kind of look at the passive here, is to start a battle, Mechty enters the recovery mode and applies Nightmare for all allies. And you're going to take a look at what recovery mode and Nightmare is. Recovery mode decreases the damage received by 30%, instability received by 2 points. This cannot be dispelled. And then Nightmare is increases AoE damage by 10%, increases AoE support damage by 50%. That one's going to be huge for Peritya with the Peritya Clukay combo. And then changes the damage type of AoE support damage to corrosion damage. This is considered a corrosion buff and cannot be dispelled. That's kind of, to me, something big on this. Changes the damage type of the AoE support damage to corrosion. Now, this is really big in that it's converting the damage to corrosion. Not only is this going to be important for someone like Peritya, who her action support itself is physical damage, it's going to convert it to corrosion. But this will also impact anybody else that has an AoE support attack that is not corrosion. It's going to be able to convert it with that Nightmare. And I don't know any off the top of my head. I think maybe Lada has one, but it might open up possibilities with current units that might have an AoE that is support action. Not only current units, but also future units that can easily be kind of lumped into corrosion just by this one converting the damage. I've always liked in these types of games where a unit can convert other units' damage types to theirs, because that gives you more flexibility on what units you're going to use within that team. So that one's really nice there, but pretty much has everything you need for the Corrosion side of things. And so we go ahead and take a look at Clukay now. Now, Clukay is a unit that most people already know about. I know most are actually going to try and save up to get her V3, and the big reason for that is she is absolutely broken, not only at V0, but if you get her all the way to V3, she becomes even more broken and really good on boss killing. And so we kind of take a quick look at her skills here. Just remember, I'm not going to go over this entire kit, but the big thing is going to come down to her passive and her ultimate here. She is immune to all control effects, which is really nice. And then she has, for each corrosion damage dealt by her own active attacks or other allies, she gets her skill points. And for every 3 that she gets, it reduces the cooldown of her ultimate by 1 turn. So a big thing with her is you're going to want a lot of corrosion type attacks hitting the enemies, which, as we already can see, can happen quite easily when you think of Peritya and Mechty, with Peritya being able to do that support attacks up to 10 times. And then you have Mechty converting that to corrosion damage. You can basically max her out real quick and just reduce the cooldown, at least theoretically, based on what I can tell in the skill descriptions here. And this skill on her ultimate is really broken, especially if you get it to V3. But when you kind of look at what it's capable of, it's basically an extended tile where you select the tile and then it deals AoE corrosion damage equivalent to 100% attack to a 5 tile width of the path, and gains 6 tiles of extra movement. So you can kind of see over here the little path it hits. And one of the big things is if this skill kills 2 or more targets, it can be used immediately again. And so you're basically able to just do 2 massive hits to a AoE line. Now, what makes it really broken is if you actually do take her all the way to V3, which I know a lot of people want to target, is that it now increases it up to, for each target hit with it, 50% damage increase. But if a boss target is hit, and this is where it's key, if a boss is hit, it increases it to 50% immediately. And then you have that if 2 or more targets or a boss is hit, it can be used immediately again. So not as it now is, the trigger is not that you killed the units, the trigger is you just hit units. And it includes a boss, which is where it's going to be the most important, is that you're hitting a boss with it. So you can just double whammy that boss with this and apply defense down and toxic infiltration on them. And then that's also going to be triggering Rita's support attacks, and then her support attacks are going to be doing corrosion damage, and so they're doing corrosion damage that's also going to be reducing this for the next turn based on her passive. It's just an all-around broken combo with them, and going to be able to do massive damage to a boss fight with that. Now, this isn't saying she's bad at V0 because her V3 is so broke. It's just she's broke at V0 and then gets even more broke at V3. And with that, there is the one downside to the corrosion side. So if we actually take a look on Pride when all the units on CN, I mean, not too worried about where they are on the tier list here. You just kind of see the biggest thing that they are missing on the corrosion is they do not have a sustain or a tank, while every other unit or other element has something covering those roles. So that is one thing that is missing. And then you actually have Hydro. Let's click there. But you have Hydro here, which it doesn't show her here on their tier list because they're brand new, but they also already have a sustain alongside their tank, which is Springfield. So Corrosion's kind of falling behind on that aspect, and they don't have their core healer / tank for their team. And as you already can tell, you want to be doing corrosion damage with your units because it triggers a lot of the stuff. And so even though you can use someone like Suomi within a team and you're going to get plenty of tanking and heals, and this team still works really well together, if you want to ramp up that damage even more, you're going to want that corrosion healer, whatever they end up being when we get them, because they're going to be able to trigger some of those impacts as well, especially for Clukay, where it comes to getting her her skill points to be able to trigger her ultimate a lot easier. And that pretty much is the Corrosion team. A really good team, not fully complete yet, so I'm waiting to see what we end up getting on the sustain side, because they bring out that sustain corrosion unit, and it's just going to make them even more broken in the future. But yeah, it's one that I will be saving up for. Now, I'm pretty much saving up for every unit in this game, but I've spent on the game. I think they will be a good one for most people to play. Clukay, now I would say, I know there are some that are saying they're going to save up for Clukay and pretty much skip everything until her. I'd advise against that, just because we're going to have difficult content coming out on the way to that point. And you're going to need to be able to get multiple teams already, even at this point, because if you see my previous video with the tier 6 boss, It is quite difficult when you're trying to use just your standard SR healers on them, and it is going to only get harder as we get to the harder content, because yes, at this point you can out level some of that stuff, but eventually we're going to get content that's not going to be, it's going to be extremely difficult to beat with the SR units. But yeah, to kind of end it here, if you like my content, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps, and thanks for watching.